In the spring, Maggie was still just a puppy, full of energy and innocence. She was small, playful, and quick to trust, which made her an instant favorite among the children of the family that owned a summer house nearby. They were captivated by her from the moment they found her wandering the neighborhood, giving her the name Maggie and treating her like their new toy. The children spent endless hours playing with her, laughing as she chased after sticks they threw. She thought she was the luckiest dog in the world, believing this warm and loving family would be hers forever. Whenever the family would fire up the grill for a barbecue, Maggie would sit by them with hopeful eyes, wagging her tail and eagerly waiting for a treat. The children sneaked her scraps of sausages and pieces of meat, and Maggie would gobble them up gratefully. She felt like she had everything she needed: a family, good food, and plenty of attention. However, as the summer drew to a close, it was time for the family to leave their vacation home. The children were devastated at the thought of leaving Maggie behind. They begged their parents to take her with them. "Mom, we can't leave Maggie here. She won't survive the winter," cried the 10-year-old girl, tears running down her cheeks. The little dog looked up at the girl, sensing the sadness in her voice, but she didn't yet understand that her fate had already been sealed. Despite the children's pleas, the parents remained firm. They had no intention of taking Maggie home with them. "We can't take her," they said. "It's too much responsibility." With that, they packed up their things and left, driving away without a second glance at the puppy who had so quickly become attached to them. Maggie ran after the car for as long as she could, her little legs unable to keep up. She watched helplessly as the car disappeared down the road, leaving her abandoned and alone. From across the street, Aaron, a man who lived in the village year-round, watched the whole scene unfold. He had always noticed Maggie with the children over the summer and now watched as she stood there, confused and heartbroken. As the day faded into evening, Aaron, who was chopping firewood for the winter, saw the small dog return to the house where she had lived for months, only to find it locked and abandoned. His heart ached as he saw the lost look in her eyes. He couldn't bear to see her suffer. That evening, as darkness fell and the air grew cold, Aaron saw Maggie lying in front of the empty house, still hoping her family would return. She was shivering, not just from the cold but from the loneliness that had suddenly engulfed her. Aaron decided to step in. He went outside and softly called to her. At first, she was hesitant, her tail tucked between her legs as she backed away from this unfamiliar man. But something in Aaron's voice made her trust him. Slowly, Maggie made her way toward him. "Come here, girl," Aaron said gently, holding out his hand. Maggie cautiously approached, sniffing the air around him, and after a moment, she rested her head against his leg. Aaron patted her on the head and spoke quietly. "You must be hungry." He led her into his yard and gave her a bowl of warm porridge mixed with meat. Maggie ate gratefully, not realizing that this simple act of kindness was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. As she finished her meal, Maggie approached Aaron once more, this time more confidently. She looked up at him with wide, questioning eyes as if asking whether she would now belong to him. Aaron sighed and sat down on his porch. "Looks like we're both alone now, huh?" he said, scratching her ears. "I used to have a dog too. She was old though, and I lost her last winter. Guess we can keep each other company now." Maggie seemed to understand his words. She gently rested her muzzle on his lap, and for the first time since her abandonment, she felt a sense of calm. Days turned into weeks, and Maggie settled into her new life with Aaron. They quickly became inseparable. Wherever Aaron went, Maggie was by his side, whether he was chopping wood, tending to his garden, or taking long walks through the quiet countryside. She had found a new family, though much smaller and quieter than the one before. But with Aaron, she felt safe, cared for, and most importantly, wanted. One day, Aaron decided to take Maggie with him on a trip to the nearby city. Maggie didn't like being left alone, so she sat quietly in the back seat of the car, curled up on a soft blanket. They arrived at a large shopping center, and Aaron parked the car, intending to pick up a few supplies. As they were walking toward the entrance, a familiar sound caught Maggie's attention. It was the children, her former owners. They had spotted her and were now running toward her, shouting her name with excitement. "Maggie! Maggie!" they called, their faces lighting up with joy. But Maggie's reaction wasn't what they expected. Instead of running to them with her usual enthusiasm, she stood still, her ears back, and let out a low growl. Her lips curled, revealing sharp teeth as she took a step back. The children, shocked, stopped in their tracks, confused by her aggression. Their parents hurried over, trying to explain the situation, but Aaron stood firm. He didn't need to hear what they had to say. "You don't need to explain anything to me," Aaron said coldly. "Children learn from their parents, and you've already shown them how to abandon someone they care about." With that, Aaron turned and walked away, Maggie by his side. The children called after her, but she didn't look back. Her loyalty now belonged to someone else, someone who had shown her true kindness and love. As winter approached, the days grew colder, and Aaron's small house became a refuge for both man and dog. But one bitterly cold evening, Aaron caught a severe cold. Normally a robust and healthy man, he rarely got sick, but this time was different. His cough worsened, and soon he was bedridden with a high fever. The house grew colder by the day because Aaron couldn't get out of bed to light the fire. Maggie stayed by his side, worried and unsure of how to help. The situation grew dire as Aaron's fever showed no signs of breaking. He was too weak to call for help, and the nearest neighbors lived far away. But Maggie knew something was wrong. One morning, she left the house, determined to find help for her friend. She ran from yard to yard, barking and scratching at doors, but the houses were all empty. Finally, Maggie remembered the village nearby, where there was a small medical clinic. Without hesitation, she bolted through the snow-covered roads, her paws barely touching the ground as she raced against time. When she arrived at the paramedic station, she began scratching at the door with all her might, barking loudly to attract attention. The paramedic on duty, a man named Ruslan, opened the door, puzzled by the commotion. At first, Ruslan tried to shoo her away, thinking she was just another stray looking for food. He even offered her a piece of sausage, but Maggie refused, barking insistently and pulling at his pant leg with her teeth. One of the villagers recognized her. "That's Aaron's dog from the dacha village," he said. "She must be here for a reason." Realizing that something was wrong, Ruslan and the villager followed Maggie back to Aaron's house. When they arrived, they found Aaron unconscious, burning with fever. Without Maggie's determination, he might not have survived the night. Ruslan quickly called for help, and Aaron was rushed to the hospital, where he was treated for pneumonia. While Aaron recovered, Maggie stayed with the paramedic, visiting Aaron in the hospital whenever she could. Each time, she would wag her tail and rest her head on the side of his bed, as if telling him everything would be all right. And it was. When spring arrived, Aaron was finally well enough to return home. Maggie was overjoyed to have him back, and together they resumed their peaceful life in the village. Maggie's former owners never returned to the holiday home that summer. They had sold the property, and no one ever saw them again. Maggie had learned what true loyalty and love meant, and from that moment on, she remained Aaron's faithful companion, never leaving his side. Together, they faced the seasons, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Maggie had found her forever home, and she would never be abandoned again.